Hello, everyone. This is the Cool Your Seats podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Scott, and tonight I figured that we would discuss a topic that is, well, very relevant to current events. You see, as we are quarantined in our tiny houses, or our slightly bigger houses, or our apartments, as the case may be, we are facing some serious problems that I figured I could address. Well, nothing too serious, but it is serious in a mental health capacity. Because a lot of us are facing the issue of social exclusion. Maybe not now, but I will guarantee that at some point you are going to feel very socially excluded. Um, unless you are living with a large family or any family whatsoever, I can almost guarantee that at some point you are going to begin craving human contact. And unfortunately, that is very limited in scope as it is, especially in today's world. Now, we've already been over how to make friends, and as fun as all those episodes were, they're not very relevant anymore due to the fact that you can't go to a bookstore or a cafe and you cannot meet your online friends. You can't do very much of anything to make a friend nowadays. So we have to focus on what exactly we can do as people to make sure that our isolation and quarantine does not become too big of an issue. So, first off, let's address the most frightening aspect of a quarantine, cabin fever, or as some people like to call it, stir crazy. Uh, with cabin fever or going stir crazy, I don't know what you want to call it what you will. You may notice that you're feeling very trapped and claustrophobic. Um, you may start to act out more aggressively. You may feel emotions more dramatically. And in rare, sometimes extreme cases, you may notice some hallucinations, whether they be auditory or visual, that maybe aren't very good. Well, I can guarantee to you that hallucinations aren't very good, but nevertheless. And one of the biggest problems with quarantining is going stir crazy. Now, there are many ways to make sure that you don't go stir crazy. Um, the first and most obvious is to get outside, and I know that a lot of people are currently in a position where they can't do that, but even just going for a walk around your backyard or, any other sort of environment where you might be able to stretch your legs is a brilliant idea. Um, Leaving a window open is another really good way to just make sure that you don't feel too trapped. Um, if your house is big enough, you might have an open concept living room that you could open up a couple of windows in, and it would definitely start to feel a little less cramped and cooped up inside of your home. Or for those of you with a national park nearby, there is also the option of taking a walk in the national parks. I'm not exactly sure how it is for most places, but I know for a fact that there are a couple of national parks who are keeping their trails open, although their parking lots are closed, thus allowing people still a way to go out and get their exercise every day in an environment that is definitely a lot more open and a lot more safe for them to be in than, say, their neighborhood streets. Um, of course, that's not always the case, and I would say to look at your local national parks website for more information regarding that. Um, this is also a wonderful time to tote the fact that the national parks are a treasure, and we should all be thankful to the national parks. So, everybody, all at once now, thank you, National Park Service. You're doing our country a favor in staying open during this trying and trivial time. Now, of course, there is always I can't quite remember the name of the movie, but there is always that solution where you build a buddy out of toilet paper rolls and name him Kevin. Because, let's face it, we all need a Kevin in our lives. And you may talk to this Kevin, you may even project a personality onto him. Or if you prefer, you could name him Wilson. And you could project a personality onto this Wilson and give him a funny voice. And you can make him your new partner in crime for the next little while. Although, do be aware that you would no longer be able to return to the outside world and act like a normal human being once you've reached this point. So, point of no return. Now that we've established the point of no return, we can talk about more sane solutions, such as being more active with your pets. I know that this may sound silly, but humans are very much a pack bonding animal, and as such, we have a tendency to get very connected with our furry little friends, and therefore, a way to become less, or at least feel less isolated, is to spend more time with your pet. Pets are a suitable, if not always equitable, source of interaction that a lot of people don't really utilize fully. They may think that their pet is an equal to a human, but when it comes to terms of social interaction that prevents you from going stir crazy, pets are one of the most accessible solutions out there. Many people have pets, whether they be dogs or cats or snakes of any variety, lizards. Just do make sure that your pet is handleable. I don't want any of you king cobra owners out there trying to cuddle up to your cobra. That is not a solution. Please do not do that. And those of you who are now in the hospital because you tried to cuddle up with your cobra, I am not liable for any damages that my words may have caused, and don't. But for those of us with sane pets, such as dogs, cats, pythons, lizards, turtles, cuddling up to your best friend is a very good way to get social interaction. And as a matter of fact, is one of the best ways to interact with anything. To prevent stir craziness, I highly recommend a pet. Well, I'm not sure that you can get a pet right now, but if you do have a pet, it is a wonderful solution to the age-old question of how in the hell am I not going to go stir crazy in this time? Uh, there are other things to take into consideration when you're dealing with stir craziness, such as what is your environment like? For instance, if you live in New York and you're in an apartment and you know for a fact that you cannot go outside due to social distancing, I would highly suggest opening up a window, maybe buying a houseplant or two, and, sticking your head outside. Or if you have a fire escape slash balcony, to use that to your advantage. Any way that you can get fresh air and a much more pleasing environment is a really good way to really prevent stir craziness. Um, and I know for a fact that the way that they prevent stir craziness in astronauts and to help them feel more grounded and at home is with potted plants. So, if you have access to a potted plant, make sure to give that baby some love. And if you have access to, say, a place where you can purchase a potted plant and you do not currently have one, do so immediately. Your mind will thank me later. Um, just as well, there's a lot of other, well, results of quarantine that I'm sure a lot of people are realizing are not as easy to get over as they may think. Something like feeding yourself. I know for at least college students or people who maybe weren't as well taught in home ec class, um, are definitely starting to feel the metaphorical burn of time that the quarantine has left upon them. And a lot of people are starting to realize that they are really struggling on their own because they really just haven't put any time into learning how to cook. Um, and a lot of fast food places right now are closed, maybe with the exception of delivery, but let's face it, you're probably also working from home or out of a job due to, well, workplaces closing down. And so you might not exactly have access to the money that you previously did. So what's the solution, I hear you asking? Um, there is no easy answer to this. And I will be honest with you, it is looking bleak right now. Um, because a lot of people are in bulk buying from grocery stores, um, and it's really hard to get hands on materials. Um, However, for those of you who maybe aren't college students and haven't thought about these in a while, I highly recommend looking at a lot of websites that promote college student recipes, big air quotes around that, because these recipes are very often cheap and low in ingredient count, quick and easy to make, and require the bare minimum of either effort or of household appliances. Things like hot plates typically suffice for these recipes, so if you have a stove, you're a leg up on the competition. Um, just as well, I've noticed that things such as ramen tend to be sold out a lot less quickly than something like uh, pork or beef. And so, what a lot of these college dorm recipes will do is they will use things like ramen noodles and other ingredients that very often are cheap and not likely to be bought in bulk, especially with the two per person limit that a lot of grocery stores and Walmarts, I'm not sure about any other large chain retailer, but Walmarts are starting to impose on their customers. Um, and for very good reason, because if you're allowing more than two items to be bought per person, you're going to run out of supplies very, very quickly. Um, I have seen entire toilet paper shelves be sold out within a matter of hours at a Walmart. Did I work there? No. Do I know what happened? Yes. Am I a stalker of the toilet paper section at Walmart? Probably. You have no evidence, you have no proof. Regardless. So, with those restrictions, do keep in mind that these things are still going to be sold out very quickly. Do I recommend tracking the shipments of your local Walmart to ensure that you are there and on the money? No, do not. What I am suggesting is utilizing um, utilizing these college dorm recipes a lot of the time. Um, if you don't have a Pinterest account, this is the time to get a Pinterest account. I know that some of you may be asking, why is this the time to get a Pinterest account? Why would I get a Pinterest account right now? That makes absolutely no sense. Why would I have any interest in that little midwife website? It's simple. Pinterest has a variety of ideas for cooking. You may not have access to all the ingredients for some of the recipes, but I can almost guarantee to you that you will find recipes on there that will allow you to begin to cook your own meals. This is solid advice regardless, because you shouldn't be eating all that much fast food. And take it from somebody who has, in their younger years, eaten non-stop fast food every day of the week. It's not healthy, it's not sustainable, it's not good. There are a lot of detriments to not eating home-cooked meals. Um, Acne breakouts are one of them. Worse feeling hair. And for those of you who may be more into the bow chicka bow wow times, it does make your genitalia and other such associated juices taste worse. So if you want your significant other to thank you, you will start eating home meals. And yes, that does mean learning how to cook, but following recipes is the quickest way to learn ways to cook, frankly. Um, and it's a Mr. Scott approved way of making sure that you as a person are well fed and have a way through this quarantine. Let's see, what are some other things to do with quarantining that may be a concern right now? Huh. I suppose there is also the problem of, well, keeping your place clean, although I'm not sure that a lot of people may be struggling with this. It is still, in all likelihood, a possibility that you or your family is struggling to keep the place clean. Because even though you have more time on your hands, you also still don't want to spend that time cleaning. You had limited time before that you didn't want to clean. You have a lot more time now that you also don't want to clean. Um, and my recommendation for this is the same recommendation that I have had the rest of my life. Um, and I might do an episode on this in the future. I might have even done an episode on this in the past. I don't quite remember. But clean little by little. Focus on one thing and get that done. And if you know for a fact that you can't get it done in one sitting, remember, some progress is better than none. It is always better to have swept half the kitchen floor than to leave the kitchen floor completely unswept. It is always better to have vacuumed a portion of the house than it is to leave the house unvacuumed. And so on and so forth. Um, little by little, you will get the house cleaned, but you do have to be willing to dedicate at least 10 to 20 minutes minimum to getting your house cleaned up. If you're not willing to dedicate that time, then I'm sure that the buildup of trash that you're seeing right in front of your face right now, and the depression that comes along with it, will help motivate you to dedicate that time. I know that it can seem daunting at times that there's so much trash in the area, or there's so many dishes, but trust me, some progress will always make you feel better than no progress. You will feel productive, you will feel happier, and it will make your life better. I'm not saying that you have to get all this stuff done. I'm not saying that there's no excuse for not getting any of it done. What I am saying is that it needs to get done at some point. And speaking of getting things done at some point, here's a word from our sponsor. This episode of Cool Your Seats is sponsored by StoreSignPros.com. If you are a business owner of any variety and you are in need of a sign, any type of sign in any color, style, with any text, StoreSignPros.com is your one-stop shop for any and all solutions. Their simple-to-use interface allows you to very quickly, concisely, and cleanly get across any sign in your imagination. Any graphics, any style, any color, any size, any variety of sign that you could possibly need, StoreSignPros.com is your go-to. Go to StoreSignPros.com and use the special promo code CYS10 for 10% off your purchase of any sign in their shop. That's right, you can get 10% off any purchase of any sign in the storesigns.pro or storesciencepro.com, shop when you use promo code CYS10. C cool Y your S seats 10 dot on storesignpros.com for 10% off. We here at Cool Your Seats, and especially I, Mr. Scott, would like to thank StoreSign Pros for sponsoring this video. And now, back to the podcast. And what a lovely word from our sponsor that was. Now, quarantining may be a very difficult time for those of us who are living far away from our families and don't have access to national parks or a backyard or a balcony. But there are ways to prevent stir craziness, and there are ways to prevent stir crazy. I cannot believe that I just said the same exact thing twice in a row. You may now slap your screen, all in unison, as punishment for my hubris. Regardless, this is not like any other pandemic that we have ever had on our planet. Previously, when we were dealing with pandemics and we were trying to prevent the spread of the disease, we were forced to stay inside with nothing. But due to recent technological developments, especially within the last couple of decades, we have access to things such as phone calls, video chats, text messages, all other manner of communication, thus making this the prime time to reconnect with anybody that you might have on your contact list. Give them a call, give them a text, shoot them a video chat. I can guarantee to you that both of you will appreciate the time that you have just talking to each other. Because you may not have had the time previously, but nowadays there is almost no excuse. Unless you're in the middle of a meeting or you're working at the moment, you can still shoot somebody a phone call. You can shoot somebody a text message. It's very easy and simple to go over and give somebody call somebody. Let them know that you're thinking of them. It's never too late, and it's never not appreciated to contact somebody. Unless it's somebody that you know for a fact doesn't like you or hates your guts or whatever you may be going through, they will appreciate your call. Even if they're in the middle of a meeting and they can't pick up, just leaving a voicemail saying that you're thinking of them is a very quick way to brighten someone's day. And that's what we all need to be doing. I mean, that's certainly what I created this podcast for. It's not just to help you out, although I do hope that you learn something from these podcasts, but I did make it to brighten your day. And I hope that you, in turn, will take your day being brightened and give it to somebody else. If we all pass on a brightened day, the whole world would be a happier place. But speaking of technological developments, during the quarantine you could also learn a new skill. I know that I've previously spoken of hobbies in a previous episode. I can almost guarantee you find that in the description, because future me is going to remember that. Right, future me? Right, Mr. Scott? Thank you, future me. But this is also a prime time to remind you that hobbies are a wonderful way to fill your time. And I can almost guarantee that due to the pandemic, you are currently facing a lot of free time. And there are plenty of things that you can do as hobbies. I know that some of you may have an instrument sitting in the corner of your room that you've been unable to find any time for. Now is your chance. I know that a lot of you may be sitting there and you've always wanted to learn some sort of skill. Maybe one of you wanted to learn how to origami. Well, I'm here to tell you that on this wonderful website called YouTube, there are plenty of tutorials to learn things like origami or Sudoku if you want to get better at Sudoku puzzles. You could learn a Rubik's Cube. Rubik's Cubes are also hobbies. Get consistently better with it. You could start learning card tricks. Start learning different little folding techniques for cards. I've seen some absolutely wonderful and talented people be able to take a deck of cards and fold it in such a unique way that it's guaranteed to impress. And that's another thing that you could learn. Well, if you're interested, that is. There are plenty of other hobbies and other things that you could learn and dedicate a little bit of time to purely by looking at YouTube tutorials. Um, Even learning something as silly or as asinine as making the bed is a wonderful way to take some time and do something relaxing. For some of us, learning a new way of folding laundry might be a more relaxing endeavor. Or for others, maybe it's finding a new way to organize your closet or your wardrobe that might really just seal the deal for way to spend time on these times. But if there's anything that I want all of you to take away, it's that you are not stuck in your home. You are not stuck with nobody around. You are not stuck in a place where you cannot do anything. There is always a way to maximize the way that you use your time efficiently. There is always a way to improve your life, and there is always a way to improve yourself. In a human's natural search for boundless knowledge, we may often feel like there are roadblocks to our creativity or to our expansion. Things like we've already learned as much as we can about a subject. And if you feel that you have reached that point, I implore you, find something that you haven't learned about in the subject and research it. And if research for that subject does not exist, make the research. If you have a great idea for a music piece, but you've been too either scared or unsure of, now is the time to try it. When nobody else is going to hear it, or everybody else is going to hear it. Now is the time to try that musical piece. And if it sounds wonderful to you, you can play it out into the wind. Maybe nobody's going to walk by. Maybe nobody will hear it. Maybe nobody has their windows open. That gives you the peace of mind to play the piece. But if someone does have their window open, or someone does walk by, it'll be a momentary brightening of their day. Hearing a nice song played by someone who is unburdened by things like monetary gain from their song. It's a beautiful thing. And if you're that person walking by, I implore you, stop and listen. You'll find that there's beauty in more places than just the screen. Take a moment to appreciate your surroundings. I feel that now more than ever, when we're all forced to stay inside, people will begin to develop a much deeper appreciation of their natural world. And if that sounds like something that you feel, well, I'm proud of you. Now for the end of today's podcast, I would just like to go back to the tried and true tradition of a little thought bubble, a scenario, a place of peace until our next meeting. So, sit back, relax, maybe turn up the volume if you want to, and listen while we spin a tale. You're walking through the wilderness, forest on all sides. Maybe it's lightly sprinkling outside and you're just listening to the way that the rain plays on the leaves. Maybe it's perfectly sunny and you're listening to the wildlife as they all play amongst the trees. You're walking through, looking around, absorbing it all. The wonderful oak trees that surround you, the forest path beneath your feet, with its leaves and the mulch beneath it. Every once in a while you're catching a glimpse of a deer through the trees, and it looks at you curiously, wondering what you're doing out there. Are you going to hurt it? Before it realizes that you're doing nothing, simply walking in peace, and it goes back to grazing wherever it was. You may see its family sitting by it. Maybe a little deer family, deer children, dear husband, dear wife. Little puns that you make in your head as jokes on your peaceful little jaunt. Maybe you've just gotten done with your picnic in the forest and you're heading back home, picnic basket in hand. Maybe you're going to go to that picnic. Once again, picnic basket in hand, but this time heavy with food. Your favorite sandwich, maybe, your favorite bag of chips, a bottle of water, or a bottle of tea, as it were. Just whatever you feel is the perfect picnic meal in that little basket as you're walking on your way to the forest clearing that you know is there. And as you arrive to that forest clearing, you sit down. Maybe you lay down a blanket, maybe not. Maybe you don't want the blanket. And you look around. Everything is still. There's a light breeze going, sure, but from your perception, nothing's moving drastically. There is no erratic movement, except maybe that of the deer in the tree line who is watching you. And you sit there and you eat your food. You drink your drink. And in that moment, everything in the world feels right. The warmth of the sun, the gentle breeze on your skin, the sound of distant wildlife playing in the trees, and the sound of the trees themselves. Though it may not be something that you'd think about, it's there. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining me in this episode of the Cool Your Seats podcast. My name is Mr. Scott, and this has been our wonderful episode of Cool Your Seats. And remember, stay calm, stay beautiful, and I will see you all next time.